And I found myself comparing Annika to all the other cheerleaders and to their parents. Mm-hmm. Why did my kid make a bad choice? Maybe their kids have better character than mine. And during the event, I was forming all kinds of stories in my head as I compared my daughter to the other girls.
Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your stepfamily from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds.
Understanding the kids' perspective.
Romance and partnership.
Parenting with great teamwork.
And yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of stepfamily life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Blended Family Coaching Show. We are always so excited when you're here.
Yep.
Hey, while you're thinking about it, would you please hit subscribe if you're over on Apple Podcasts, or maybe if you're on Spotify, hit follow, or anywhere else that you can follow or subscribe. We would love for you not to miss anything. Yeah. And remember, on Fridays, we've got those simple steps coming out now that are just little quick nuggets that might give you some encouragement or some hope as you head into your weekend. And for now, the podcast is the only place we're putting those. So if you don't hit subscribe, you might miss out. And so we don't want you to miss that.
Yeah. And don't forget to share us with a friend.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Share us out on social media. Tell everybody how cool we are. Well, how cool Kim is anyway, because I don't know how cool I am. But in any case, yeah, we would love to be able to support your friends and your family and your coworkers as well. And hey, while you're at it, leave us a rating and a review. We'd really appreciate it. All right, enough of the salesy sound. I was sounding like a salesman right then. We just need to get to the subject, right?
All right, let's dive in.
All right, let's do it.
So we all want to enjoy life, right? We want to experience satisfaction and joy and fulfillment. We want our relationships to be rich and really connected. And I want all those things too. But some days it can feel like truly experiencing deep satisfaction in life might be impossible. And for me, there are those times when a sneaky little thought pattern sets up camp in my mind. And I start to get a bit envious or jealous of what the people around me have. You know, the nice things they have, their perfect relationships, their close bonded family, you know, the list can go on and on. And
seemingly.
Yeah. And then I get stuck in this comparison trap. And suddenly what I was genuinely satisfied with and happy about yesterday doesn't seem so great today.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right. And my joy gets robbed. My fulfillment gets hijacked. And in the end, it's me who misses out on all the blessings that I already have. That's what comparison traps do.
Yeah.
And that's why we want to explore this today. We're going to talk about some of the most common areas of stepfamily life where we might tend to make comparisons and how comparison thinking is a trap that usually leads to negative thought patterns that leave us feeling jealous or envious, which in turn leads to discontentment and dissatisfaction. And the real bummer is that if we get stuck here, we'll eventually experience disconnection in our relationships, which is the total opposite of what we really want to experience.
That's right.
Theodore Roosevelt said this: comparison is the thief of joy.
Yep.
I think Teddy was right.
Yeah.
And that thief is subtle.
That's true.
He's sneaky, and he can often rob our joy without us even realizing it. We can so easily become blind to the good things in our life when we're stuck in a comparison trap.
Sure.
So let's get equipped to battle this thief by calling out some of the areas we easily get trapped by comparison. And then we're going to explore 4 specific ways to avoid this trap altogether.
That's so good. Well put, honey. That's good. You know, to start with, it's really important, though, for us to point out that we all tend to naturally make comparisons. It's sort of how we're wired. And we do that as we interact with other people and with our experiences in daily life.
Yeah.
But when comparison becomes a pattern that leads to negative thoughts, that's when it actually becomes a trap. So if it's true that our thoughts determine how we feel, which I think that really is the case, that means how we habitually think about things is going to determine how we regularly feel.
Right.
So if we want to experience more positive feelings like joy, then we need to break free from comparison traps that we end up being a part of.
Those negative thought patterns.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And, we've come to realize that there tend to be a few common areas that those of us living in blended families can easily fall into comparison traps, right? Mm-hmm. Not that we've never experienced these before, right?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3 of the places we see are comparing our kids, comparing our relationship, and comparing our home with our former spouse's home.
With the other home.
Let's just kind of break those 3 things down a little bit. So talk a little bit about comparing our kids.
Okay, let's talk about that. It's easy to compare the children in a blended family because they can be so different, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We recently met with a blended couple who described their 2 diverse sets of kids. His kids are really noisy and rambunctious. Mm-hmm. When they're at the house, there's always loud music and lots of activity, and they're constantly interacting with the adults and making lots and lots of requests. Mm-hmm. But her kids are very reserved. They kind of keep to themselves most of the time. They're really quiet, and they tend to slide under the radar when they're at the house and are very self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. And after years of single parenting, this couple, who are each used to kids behaving a certain way, are now noticing how different their partner's kids are.
Yeah.
And this can lead to comparing.
What's funny is this could be true in first family life as well.
Of course.
It's not just blended family life. But the thing is, for some reason, these blended family dynamics tend to create maybe a magnifying glass around the differences in the different sets of kids.
Right.
And so we've got to be aware of that and kind of be careful about falling into negative traps here. Now, we've also worked with couples whose individual kids are responding very differently to the blending process itself. Mm-hmm. One set of kids maybe is on board and they're accepting of this new step parent and these new step siblings that are on their way in, while the other set of kids might be resistant, possibly even rejecting the whole process or that new step parent coming in. And boy, it's really easy to compare that and have some negative ideas around one set of kids or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we might get stuck in a trap of comparing the kids in our family to other families and their kids. Mm-hmm. And of course, this isn't exclusive to blended families,
That's
right?
Yeah.
Any parent can make observations about how their child compares to a friend's child around everything from natural abilities to academic achievement, personality traits, and even physical appearance.
Right.
But regardless of the different ways we compare our kids, we can quickly get stuck in a comparison trap that leads to negative attitudes and thoughts.
Absolutely. So that's one area we see comparison really creeping into blended family life. But let's talk about how we might be comparing our relationship. So it can be natural to compare our current spouse with a previous partner.
Right.
There might be some things maybe that you actually appreciated about a former spouse, and now you're not experiencing those things in your current relationship.
Right.
Maybe, even if those were just little subtle things that I kind of expected, well, gee, I thought that was going to be part of this deal, and it's not. That can be really challenging.
Yeah, they're 2 different people.
Now, other times we might compare our relationship or our marriage to our friends' marriages or to a coworker's relationship or someone in our extended family. Maybe there's a little bit of envy over, I don't know, your sister's marriage because she and her husband seem to spend a whole lot of time together, and her husband's always doing romantic gestures and, surprising her and things like that. And maybe you spend a lot of time comparing their relationship or her husband to yours. And you tend to notice the differences where things seem to fall short for you. Maybe it's been a while since your husband did anything romantic or even showed an interest in spending time with you.
Right.
That can create a comparison trap.
Or maybe there's that couple you know from church that are so connected and they never seem to have any problems or conflict in their marriage, right? And you find yourself comparing their smooth sailing relationship with all the difficult interactions and the problems that you've been experiencing lately in your marriage. Yeah. And maybe you're wondering why things are so hard for you.
We've kind of been there before, haven't we? Yeah.
Yeah. Or another tough comparison is when we compare our blend to another stepfamily's blend.
Yeah.
And again, we might struggle with questions like, why do we have to deal with more tough blending issues than they do?
Yeah.
Why do their step relationships seem so strong and bonded and ours are so painful and difficult?
Yeah. What's wrong with us? Or maybe what's wrong with them?
No.
Yeah. You know, another area where it can be really easy to get stuck in a comparison trap is when we compare our home to our former spouse's home. That can be a really deadly trap. This can happen around all kinds of things, everything from finances and spending habits to the expectations or the rules for the kids and things like that. And it's so easy to compare the relational dynamics across households as well.
Right. I mean, we worked with a stepmom who was so hurt because the kids had accepted the step-parent in the other home with open arms, but they'd rejected her.
Oh, that's tough.
She easily fell into a comparison trap around how the kids interacted with the other home in comparison to how they disregarded her. That's really tough.
That's right.
Okay, so those are 3 specific comparison traps that we can get stuck in. When we compare our kids, when we compare our relationship, and when we compare our home with the other home and our former spouse.
Yeah, it's rough.
So for the rest of our time, let's explore how to break free from comparison traps, or better yet, avoid them altogether, right?
Yeah,
that would
great.
be nice. Because like we said before, comparison is the thief of joy. And we want you to experience joy in your blended family and to steer clear of the negative impact of comparison traps.
Yeah.
So let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do that. And first, let's explore the root of comparison so that we can understand a little bit more about why it is we even do this. Why do we compare so much, right? We need to understand that there's actually a biological reason for why we are prone to comparing ourselves to others. It's because our brain uses comparison to figure out kind of how we measure up. Like, where is our placement in the world? And, you know, spatially, in a lot of ways, it's really important for us to be able to do that. But sometimes in some of these areas of kids or relationship and all of that, it kind of breaks down. It's challenging for us, but it's a natural, normal process for everyone.
Right.
I don't even know how to say this guy's name. Thomas Moosweiler, I think. He's a professor of organizational behavior. I've never met him, but he describes the comparison this way. It's one of the most basic ways that we develop an understanding of who we are, what we're good at, and what we're not so good at. So it's kind of wired into us, and it's not all bad.
Right. So we're naturally wired for connection and belonging, but when we're stuck in a comparison trap, we're putting ourselves at risk. Most of the time, our brains make comparisons in a split second, and we may not even realize we're doing it. But when we're overly focused on how good other people seem to have it compared to our own situation, we can become snared in a toxic trap of these negative thought patterns.
Totally.
And then we can become anxious and sometimes even depressed. And then our joy is gone.
It stole our joy.
Yeah. So how can we avoid all of this? Let's explore 4 powerful tips to stop comparing yourself to others.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the first one. And that is making a habit of counting your blessings. I know it sounds simple, but it's probably one of the most powerful things you can do. Willie Nelson once said, when I started counting my blessings, my whole life turned around. That's
I love that.
Powerful, yeah. The truth is, thankful thoughts can turn things around. It turns what we have into enough. But if we don't focus on the good things that we already have, those blessings that we need to count, we're going to continue to feel like we don't have enough, or worse yet, that we aren't enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, honey, you know this about me, but I tend to be a glass half empty person.
You said it, I didn't.
Yeah, I can really struggle with comparison and negative thought patterns. And several years ago, I read a book that changed my outlook and impacted my life. It's called 1,000 Gifts by Ann Voskamp. And it's a faith-based book, and it's all about finding real meaning in life through the adventure of thankfulness.
I like adventure.
And after I read this book, I started keeping a gratitude journal. And I'll admit that I'm not as consistent as I'd like to be, but I have recorded hundreds of things that I'm thankful for.
Yeah.
Little things that might seem so insignificant, but really do bring me great joy. And then there's bigger, more meaningful things that I just can't deny in my life. And the beautiful thing about my gratitude journal is that it's become a really powerful tool. When I'm feeling down and I'm starting to compare and I believe I'm not enough, or the blessings I have are not enough, I can just open my gratitude journal and simply revisit some of those past entries. I can actually count my blessings.
Yeah. Do you number them? You do? You put numbers on them?
Yeah.
How many you have right now? Do you know?
I think close to 500.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Am I one of them?
Of course.
Oh,
You're in
that's
there
good.
multiple times.
Oh, so it's less than 500
Yeah.
then.
I was going to read some of them, but I didn't think we'd have time.
That's awesome. Okay, so you can count all these blessings that you've
Right.
recorded, and I can attest that you've actually done this.
Yes.
I've heard people talk about this thing, but I think you're the only person in my life that I know actually does it.
Yeah.
And I should do it. I should follow your
Yes,
example.
it's very powerful.
When you do that, you open this up, you revisit past centuries, you can actually count all your blessings. What happens?
Well, what I've discovered is that I'm instantly reminded of how those blessings made me feel when I wrote them down. And that memory soon leads to an experience of joy and happiness. I can take it all in. It just kind of wells up in me as I recall what I have to be thankful for. And then that always brings just this genuine smile and this genuine joy that it's amazing.
That's pretty cool.
It's helped me to refocus on what I do have and that it's enough, that I'm enough. And I've learned over the years that counting blessings, like I said, is just so powerful, that act of acknowledging what you're thankful for and then remembering those things. It can keep you from getting stuck in a negative comparison trap.
Yeah. Would you say that that's maybe changing you a little bit from a glass half empty to a more of a glass half full kind of person?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would agree
When I do
that.
it, when I take the time to do it, and it's not horribly time consuming.
Yeah.
And it's so worth it when I do.
Yeah. I've seen that in you. So, if you're listening to this, think about when you find yourself starting to compare things. We talked earlier about, your sister and her marriage. She shared something romantic that her husband did for her recently, and you feel like your relationship is less than or something along those lines. Maybe it's time to stop and take a little time to identify what you do have to be thankful for.
Right.
This can help you to steer clear from a comparison trap. Maybe the truth is your husband isn't the most romantic person in the world, but he's really helpful around the house. He really supports you in that way. When you're able to acknowledge how grateful you are when he helps you fold the laundry or fixes the dishwasher or offers to drive the carpool for you, that feeling of gratitude can help you to refocus your mindset and keep you rooted in the good things that you do have instead of what you don't have compared to someone else.
Right, exactly. When you start to compare your tidy and your well-mannered kids to your partner's messy, not so well-mannered kids, stop and identify at least one thing that you appreciate about their kids. Maybe your stepkids are messy around the house, but when there's a project to be done, like yard work or washing the car, they're all in and happy to help.
Yeah.
That's something to be thankful for.
Sure.
Maybe your partner's kids don't always say the words thank you when you do something for them.
Maybe your own kids don't say that.
But they show their appreciation in other ways, maybe with a sweet nod or a smile.
Yeah.
When you find yourself comparing, stop and search for the blessings that your partner's kids bring to your family, even if they're small.
Yeah.
So the question we encourage you to ask yourself around this first one is this: am I intentionally counting my blessings? Remember that counting your blessings can turn your whole life around.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you use the word intentional. Am I intentionally counting my blessings?
Yeah.
A lot of us think, oh, yeah, I'm thankful for whatever. But I love your gratitude journal because it's an intentional way that you've actually recorded that for many years. Yeah. Well done, honey.
It really does help.
All right. Well, let's talk about the second tip.
All right. The second one is to choose contentment. Now, gratitude often leads to contentment, which will help you to experience more joy and more satisfaction in life, regardless of your circumstances.
And you can choose it, is what you're saying.
You can choose it. Now, let's think about the opposite of contentment, which is discontentment. One thing that tends to be a catalyst to discontentment is when we believe that the grass is greener somewhere else. That's a comparison trap right there.
Yep.
And if we hold on to this belief and continually entertain thoughts around how much better someone else has it, this will lead to a lot of negative self-talk.
That's right. You know, psychologist Nick Wignall says, hey, chances are not even those whom you compare yourself with can live up to your idealized images of them. This is why so often when people spend some length of time with their heroes and role models, they discover that those whom they looked up to also have weaknesses, flaws, difficulties, and problems just like everyone else.
So true.
Yeah, you know, that word idealized that he uses in there really sticks out because when we're stuck in that kind of grass is always greener mindset, we're actually comparing someone else's front stage perfect performance, that ideal of the person, to our own messy, ugly backstage reality. So it's not really even a fair comparison, right? It's apples to oranges. And when we're blinded by an ideal that isn't based in reality, it's easy to fall into a comparison trap. There's a great quote out there that says, sometimes the grass is greener on the other side because it's fake. You know? We need to remember that every one of us is a work in progress. We've all got stuff and we're all far from perfect. So your blended family is a work in progress. And the truth is, difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. Another great quote, I think you have that on a t-shirt, honey,
from
I do.
Family
Life Blended, right?
Yeah, I love that quote.
Yep.
Difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. And sometimes when we're feeling discontent, we're actually projecting a story rather than living in the reality of life.
Yeah.
I struggled through a really painful season when my daughter Annika was on the cheerleading squad in high school, and she made a bad choice that actually violated the cheer squad's code of conduct, their code of ethics. Now, as a result of her choice, she was suspended from performing with the squad for a period of time. Unfortunately, that period of time took place during their big fundraising event where my daughter and I had previously committed to helping out with, right? We were volunteers. So we both had to attend the event. But when all the cheerleaders got up to perform their routine, guess what? Annika had to sit out on the sidelines. And I found myself comparing Annika to all the other cheerleaders and to their parents. Why did my kid make a bad choice? Maybe their kids have better character than mine. Maybe it's because I'm a bad parent and they've got it all together, and so their kids don't even make bad mistakes.
Boy, it kind of leads you to an ugly place, doesn't
on
it?
And on, yeah. And during the event, I was forming all kinds of stories in my head as I compared my daughter to the other girls. And I experienced a lot of shame and discontent that unfortunately I held on to for quite a while because these toxic feelings of discontent, they seem to get stirred up over and over in me every time I had to be around the cheer squad and the parents, which was a lot since this incident happened at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
So I saw the other girls as these perfect little angel cheerleaders with wings and halos, and they just kind of shined. And my daughter was the fallen angel in the shadows. Yeah, and it was such a painful comparison trap. And it was based on a lot of my own assumptions. And as it turns out, those stories in my head were inaccurate. At the end of the year, as the squad was preparing for the upcoming cheer competition, a large portion of the girls got together one night without Annika. She wasn't there. And they made a poor choice, similar to the one that Annika had made previously. And they were all suspended and unable to perform in the cheer competition.
Wasn't much of a competition that year.
No. They ended up placing really low in the event because they were missing so many girls. So when I think back, I realize I spent months struggling with negative self-talk and assumptions. And that was such a big waste of my time and my mental energy. I'd been projecting stories as I compared my child to others, and those stories kept me stuck in discontent. And I think sometimes it even impacted how I treated my daughter, which, I'm not proud to say because my daughter's awesome.
Yeah.
She brought a lot to that squad and she's amazing.
Yeah.
And that trap really robbed me of experiencing joy with her through that season.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that story,
Yeah,
honey.
it's hard to talk about.
I know you're getting pretty vulnerable
It's
there.
ugly.
Yeah, it's okay. We've all been in ugly places before, right? This is it's such an easy trap to fall into when we compare our blended family dynamic to other people's first family dynamics too, right? Well, sometimes we can make assumptions like, well, our relational connections are never going to be as strong as theirs. Or you talked about these stories in your head that we can just get trapped in. And sometimes we start to believe for some reason that we're second-class citizens just because we live in a blended family and we've experienced some of this loss in our past. But that's just not true.
No.
And when we get stuck comparing ourselves to other families, that steals our joy. It keeps us believing things that aren't true. And these beliefs and assumptions really don't reflect the overall big picture. And they certainly aren't predictive of what's to come.
No.
So we've got to be really careful around what we allow in our thoughts, what we allow ourselves to entertain, and these comparisons that we tend to make with other families, whether they're in blended families or first families. And it's tough because we live in a comparison-focused world.
The grass does seem greener a lot of the time.
It seems like it, but sometimes it's fake.
Yeah, that's right. Now, we want to be careful about this word content because it doesn't mean that we just accept things that are dysfunctional in our lives or that we don't have goals for the future. And it definitely doesn't mean that we're sitting around stagnant and not intentionally moving forward to grow and improve our circumstances.
Yeah, contentment and complacency are two very different things.
Right.
Yeah.
True contentment is a state of mind. And I love this quote. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it.
Oh, yeah, that's good. That's right. You got to choose to water the grass. Yeah.
If you want to create more connection in your relationship, like you see in your sister's relationship with her husband, and if you want to spend more quality time together, then take steps to cultivate that in your own marriage. You don't have to stay stuck in a comparison trap, and you don't have to stay stuck in apathy or hopelessness either.
Yeah.
You can choose to redirect the time and energy you've spent comparing towards watering your own grass instead.
Yeah.
It's a mindset shift.
I love that. So if we really want to choose contentment, we might want to ask ourselves this question. Are you content with where you are and choosing to water your own grass? I mean, it's a really simple, like, hey, how am I watering my grass today?
Right.
With my kids, with my relationship, with my blended family.
Right.
What am I doing in all that? And so that helps us to stay away from this pursuit of perceived perfection and instead embrace imperfect progress. That's going to help us to maintain a real mindset of contentment.
Right. Imperfect progress is still progress.
I love it. That's right. So let's move on to the third thing that we can do to avoid comparison trap. First, we're counting our blessings. Then we're going to choose contentment. And now we're going to refuse to compete with others.
Right. Just don't go there.
That's right.
If it were only that easy.
A recent study found that keeping up with the Joneses actually causes financial distress. Surprise, surprise.
Right.
They discovered that, this is really interesting, in neighborhoods where someone won the lottery. So all of a sudden, my neighbor gets a bunch of money. Then the neighbors are more likely to make large visible purchases and actually end up going bankrupt. Oh. So this dude wins the lottery and I go bankrupt because I'm trying to keep up with him, right?
The whole rest of the neighborhood is done.
The funny thing is in all this isn't a money issue. It's a heart issue. Those people that saw their neighbors as getting this upgrade in lifestyle all of a sudden felt like they had to have one too.
Right.
Even though they couldn't afford it.
Yeah, they had to
achieve it. Absolutely. Imagine how they felt when they had to file for bankruptcy.
Gosh,
that's a bummer.
Defeated.
Yeah. The truth is we can't afford to compete with others. And not just because it's hard on the bank account, but because it's emotionally unwise and leaves us feeling discontent, dissatisfied, and often envious of what other people have.
Absolutely. And the antidote to this kind of endless competition is to celebrate with others.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, you won the lottery. Good for you.
Good for you. I still love my 2012 Honda Civic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really what I drive, by the way.
Now, when your former spouse, let's just say, for instance, happens to buy a shiny brand new car or takes off on an extravagant vacation, choose to be happy for them.
That's right.
Now, I know from personal experience that this isn't always an easy thing to do.
I agree.
Especially if you're experiencing a twinge of jealousy because you're still driving around in an old beater and haven't been on a real vacation for quite a while.
Yep.
But along the way, this focus on being happy for others, even for my former spouse, it's really helped me to stay out of the competition and forced me to stop and examine my motives for even wanting to compete in the first place.
Yeah.
What I've really come to realize is that if I were to engage in a competition and try and keep up with my ex or whoever it might be, that I'd be doing it for reasons that are less than honorable. I'd really be trying to elevate myself or impress them, which makes me wonder why I care so much about what others think. And what am I really trying to prove here? Or I'd be competing to try and make myself feel better because for some reason now I'm feeling sorry for myself. And these are just not motives that I want to act on.
Yeah.
They feel really inauthentic to me. And that's just not the person I want to be. I pride myself on being an authentic, real person. So I don't want to go there. So when I'm feeling jealous about something someone else is doing or what someone else has, and I'm tempted to try and compete and keep up with them or even outdo them, I stop and I consider my motives. And once I realize how irrational and inauthentic it is to try and compete, and how I'd really be betraying myself by acting on some of these dishonorable motives, then I'm able to move away from those feelings of jealousy and I'm more open to celebrating with others when they experience something good.
Yeah.
And when I can do that and genuinely celebrate with them, then I really do feel good about myself because I made an honorable, authentic choice and I didn't react to jealousy.
I love it.
I also realized that, you know what, life is long and I'm going to have my fair share of things to celebrate too.
That's right.
Right. I recently got to purchase a fun, gently used car that I absolutely love to drive.
Oh, your happy little coaster?
Yeah, my happy little coaster.
Yep.
And, as a family, we've made wonderful memories on vacations over the years, even simple ones like camping trips that I wouldn't trade for anything.
Yeah, I agree.
So the truth is, I don't need to feel sorry for myself when good things happen to someone else.
Yep.
My lifestyle might look different than theirs, but that doesn't mean that my life is less meaningful or fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot easier to celebrate with others when you're regularly counting your blessings and you're choosing to be content.
That's right.
So find a way to celebrate with others and refuse to compete.
So if you happen to notice that you're slipping into that competition mindset, stop and ask yourself 2 questions. First, am I trying to keep up with and compete with others? And if the answer is, yeah, I think I might be, then maybe ask yourself, okay, well, what's my motivation really? Choose to honor yourself enough to walk away from that competition, especially the ones that don't serve you well.
Right.
In most cases, it's emotionally unwise to compare and compete with others. Okay, so get out of that competition and let's move on to the final tip.
All right.
This is where we want to know our triggers and guard ourselves from them. Okay, this is really about our awareness. You have the capacity to start noticing the situations that tend to cause you to play the comparison game and start to identify your triggers. Mm-hmm. Here's a really big one in our world today. Social media. Yeah. When we're constantly exposed to everyone else's front stage performance, we talked about that earlier, it's really easy to slide into making comparisons. We compare about everything they're doing, where they're going, what their kids are accomplishing, even what they ate for breakfast. I mean, social media platforms bombard you with everyone else's highlight reel, all their big wins, the cool stuff, the pleasurable experiences. And the reality of that is there's nothing necessarily innately wrong with it. But if you're in a place where you kind of feel uncool at the moment, maybe you've experienced a setback in life, things aren't very pleasurable for you right now, and maybe you just hate what you ate for breakfast, then spending time on social media in that moment might not be the best place to feed your soul.
Right.
In fact, it'll probably lead to lots and lots of comparison traps that'll leave you feeling discouraged or depressed. So if social media is a comparison trigger for you, you got to make a choice to guard yourself by limiting your exposure to it or really carefully considering your frame of mind before you jump on it and be strategic about when you will engage with social media. Maybe a next step for you is to do a social media fast and just give yourself some relief, delete the app off your phone. Don't log on in the evening and just take a couple of weeks to detox so that you can break free from some of those comparison traps. A fast can be really empowering for someone who might get triggered around social media. So think about how you're emotionally responding and try not to underestimate the impact of social media. Yeah. Once in a while, I'll go on to when it comes to blended family life, I'll go on to a group, on Facebook or maybe a stream in Reddit, and I'll read through some of the things that people are saying. And what I realize is a lot of it is a big giant complaint fest. And it's not necessarily constructive. Yeah. And it actually, even though we work to kind of uplift families and
bring hope,
man, sometimes I feel just depressed after reading some of those things. And I realize, wow, this could be a real negative impact to my life. And so if you find yourself reading a lot of those things, I challenge you to reconsider what you're filling your mind with.
Yeah, if you walk away feeling hopeless, that's not good.
That's right.
Or, maybe it's a specific person that tends to trigger you. I have a friend that I've known for years and I really care about her, but I've identified that after I spend some time with her, I usually feel bad about my parenting and my kids. And I've recognized that this is because she tends to brag about her kids a lot, and she only seems to share all the positive things they're doing, how smart and gifted they are, and so on and so on. Now, I don't really think her kids are perfect, but because that's where she seems to stay focused most of the time we're together, I can start to compare that perfect picture she paints of her kids to my imperfect kids who sometimes struggle and mess up. And that comparison is what leaves me feeling bad about myself and my kids, and I start kind of questioning my parenting. So for the last several years, I've decided to limit the time I spend with her. We still get together occasionally and catch up, but I choose to keep a certain amount of distance because I realize that spending time with this particular friend often triggers my comparison tendencies. And it's okay to set healthy boundaries around relationships that might create some challenges for you around comparisons.
Yeah. And you know what? In blended family life, I think that's a great thing to think through, but sometimes we can't necessarily limit our exposure to different people within our blended family life.
Or with our former spouse.
Yeah, for sure. But we certainly can pay attention to our thought process and what kind of comparison traps we're entering into. And we can mitigate the impact, even though we can't necessarily change the quantity of time.
Yeah.
And so we need to be aware of those triggers. And there can be all kinds of sources of comparison triggers that could be present in your life. Maybe walking around a high-end shopping mall or driving through an expensive neighborhood makes you feel discontented with life. We encourage you to just take some time to really think about this and brainstorm and pay attention. Be aware of where you're headed in the different areas that you are in life. And maybe guard yourself or set some healthy boundaries around those triggers. Anything or anyone that shakes your sense of contentment or makes you feel inferior is something that needs to be examined and considered.
Yeah, pay attention.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so those are 4 tips to help you steer clear of comparison traps and maintain your joy. Now, don't let that thief of the comparison trap rob your joy. So first, we're regularly counting our blessing. You know, the struggle ends when gratitude begins.
Yep.
We're going to choose contentment. You know, whoever always looks for greener grass on the other side is never going to be able to appreciate the green grass that was right under their feet the entire time. You just have to water it, right?
Yeah.
We're going to refuse to compete. Jealousy is an inner consciousness of one's own inferiority. It's really a mental cancer. Yeah. But instead, we're going to choose to celebrate with others. And finally, we're going to know our triggers and guard ourselves, especially if the activity or that particular person doesn't really add meaning or value to our life.
Absolutely. And you can do this. You've got what it takes to avoid comparison traps.
Yeah.
And let's wrap up with a positive thought around comparison.
Okay.
We've explored how our human propensity to compare and to want what others have can be detrimental unless what you see and want is something of deep worth or meaning. You know, some comparisons might actually be healthy. When you recognize something extraordinary in someone else, something you admire and strive for, and that person inspires you to reach new heights. You can have a desire to be more like someone you admire without getting stuck in a comparison trap.
That's right.
Maybe there's someone you know who's very patient and calm, even when they're experiencing a lot of chaos. They don't overreact. They don't get hung up on things that aren't important. Maybe there's someone you know that's able to empathize with others and seek to truly understand. It could be someone who's really teachable and humble. They're always looking for new ways to grow and they don't act like they have it all together or know it all. Maybe they're courageous and they're willing to take steps forward even when it might seem risky. And you admire that. It could be someone that's super flexible. They don't get thrown off when things change and they can quickly adapt. Maybe it's someone who maintains that curiosity mindset towards people that are different than them instead of becoming judgmental. These are powerful traits. We talked about all of these traits back in episode 105. Patience, empathy, humility, courage, flexibility, and a curiosity mindset. These traits are critical for those of us living in blended families.
Absolutely. And you know, when you come across someone with these kind of traits or something you admire, rather than playing the comparison game, just get to know them. Ask them some questions, gain some understanding around how they've developed these kind of traits and mindsets. I think I've mentioned before on the podcast, Years ago, I asked two men that I really admired to be my mentors. Both of these men were living out characteristics that I really wanted for myself. They were devoted husbands, they were good fathers, and they had grown kids who I really appreciated as well. I didn't have a lot of positive examples of how to get the kind of marriages that they had or how to raise my kids to be people of character like they seemed to do. My early life was challenging, and I wasn't really sure how to be a good husband and a father like I really wanted to be. So I just asked these two guys to come alongside me in the journey. I asked them specific questions, and I engaged in rich conversations about life with them. And they've both been major influences that have shaped me into the man I've become. I'm better because of them.
I'm so appreciative of them.
They saved our marriage, and
yeah,
absolutely.
Amazing.
I'm a different man because of it. So when you see that couple at church that seems so connected and problem-free, think about inviting them to have a coffee or a meal with you, and then start asking them questions about how they got there. What you're probably going to find is that their backstage is actually just as messed up as your backstage.
Yeah.
But if you spend some time around these people that you admire, you might just learn that they really aren't perfect, that they've endured some difficult seasons in their marriage and when they weren't as connected as they appear right now. And maybe they're willing to share with you how they grew together and move forward to get to where they are right now. This can give you some valuable insight into how you can water your own grass and build that connection that you're looking for in your own marriage.
That's right, because we're all in different places along the journey. Some are further along than we are, and they've acquired a lot of wisdom and skill. They've got some self-control and confidence, and they've navigated through some of the tough stuff that we might be struggling with now.
That's right.
But falling into a comparison trap is going to keep you unhappy, bitter, and distanced from those you want to love and learn from.
That's right.
You won't have the capacity to learn much from a distance. So instead, continue to count your blessings, choose contentment, refuse to compete, and identify your triggers. These things will help keep your mind open to embracing those around you with admirable qualities and learning from them. You can avoid the downside of a comparison trap and turn your comparisons around as an effective tool in becoming a better person.
That's right. Well said. So stay out of those comparison traps, and that's going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.